introductions again, as if nobody knew who I was. Kevin Lovergier, lead operations surveyor with Geometronics. And this is Geometronics Webinar number 13. Today's kind of a little loose. We're going to do ORD survey stuff. And basically, we're going to go through the ODOT survey ribbon and the new Cadastral editions that were recently updated with the last workspace update. I'm not going to spend any time on this at all because, yeah, we've been here. Now, I put in the email invite to go ahead and bring your questions because, like I said, this is going to be pretty open format. So our big topic list today is customizing the tools. I wanted to show you a couple of things because I have helped a few people. I've gotten a couple of questions with, wow, where'd you get that at? So I did want to share that. And then we're going to talk about what's in the Cadastral ribbon, kind of what we put behind it for designing it. And then I've got a big section in here for questions. And so you can see I even made a spot to take notes. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to add right now? Don't everybody jump forward at once.
I'll throw a question out there, Kevin.
Shoot.
Where would I go to get the list of VBA macros or attribute pairs and where they're assigned?
It's in the list. We can't forget it now. I'll leave this up on the other monitor. So if you think of something, let me know. I can type it in there. But with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. I'm just going to go ahead and stop my video because it does funny things to the web recording. And the first thing I wanted to go over is a couple of the custom tools. The biggest one being this workflow pop-up menu. This workflow pop-up menu is actually a tool that is from our ODOT ribbon. And it's this guy right here, the workflow pop-up menu. But you can dock it or basically add it to your quick toolbar. And you can make any other sort of changes you want to any of these toolbars following those same basic steps. Now, another one that I always like is I like to have my levels. So I'm going to dock that there. I'm going to pin it. Well, now it's custom. So what would happen if you started to get, some funny things going on or something's just not right, or sometimes depending on how things get reset, we clear our preferences. So if let's start all the way over. If you go to the engineering folder on your desktop and you go to V10, you can get to these clear ORD preference. And you can also clear your MicroStation Connect. But if I run the clear ORD preference, something happened in the background. Now I can start open roads again. And this is going to make it fresh right out of the box. So what you're going to notice is it comes back to the no workspace, no work set. So let's make sure we've got the right workspace and the right work set. And even though we have that now, it doesn't have a list of our files because it's reset the preferences. So if I browse to that file that we were just in, and I have it down in my ORD working folder, webinar today and demo today. Now we can't get click happy. Remember, we got to wait for it to fully open. Not quite there yet. Oh, now we're here. So notice, our drawing is back, but my custom that I made on my shortcut menu up here is not there. My levels are not docked over here. Those are all things that are held in your preference file. So if we hit this customize quick access toolbar, one of the first things I'll do is I'm going to turn on element selection. I'm going to display that. Because that way it's an easy way, because on most of the ORD ribbons, there's a element selection tool, which is a way to get out of, if I'm in some report and I just want to get out of it, I can just go to element selection. A few of them, that tool is not there. So it's always nice to have it up there in the quick access toolbar. So now I'm going to say customize. And in this window, basically ORD is showing you every button or tool that is in the whole program, whether those be Bentley design tools or whether they be, that's some good English there, whether they are ODOT design tools. Things like line codes for traffic plans. And if we remember that the tool we wanted was called workflow menu pop-up. And notice once I select a button or a tool, my add command is active. And now I can add it to the list. If I expand this a little bit, you can see it says pending because I have not applied it yet. So I can say apply. And now it's up there. So I can go ahead and close that. And what you'll find, or at least what I find, is I like that menu much better than coming to this Bentley drop-down box and having to scroll. I can hit it. I can see everything. I can go directly to what I want. And I find it a little bit quicker.
Hey, Kevin, you can also, I don't know if you're going to show this or not, but you can also change the position of those along that toolbar from your customized quick access toolbar box. You can move them around up and down if you right.
I was not going to show that, but we can. So let's just say we want print to be down one. And let's say we want set mark between undo and redo. Now, and that is something too, that notice how when this box came up default, it was too narrow. You didn't see those commands. So thanks for the reminder, John. That's you have to widen that out to get those keys to show up.
Yeah, I know. I just use that quick access toolbar a lot with all of my commonly used stuff, and I kind of like to have it in a specific order. So,
yeah, and this is one of those things. I think sometimes you're going to get quite a bit of the preference files seem to cause issues. And so there's going to be a lot of times when you have to go reset them. And I know we all get used to having buttons in certain places and we like the things where they are. So get used to resetting your stuff. And I think you're all familiar with, what's going on here. Many Windows interfaces use this now. I can dock it inside of that window. I can dock it inside of my main window. I like to have it appear on the right. And then if you pin it, that's when it collapses itself. And you can have multiple things pinned there. Let's just say I bring up my properties dialog. I pin that. And so now I can hover over either one of those. Want that to come out just a little bit wider. And they're both docked on that side. Is there any questions around customizing, that's just kind of the basic one I wanted to show you.
I'll add a comment on that. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of times your preference file gets corrupted, and you know, a lot of times we found that's what's causing issues, and you do have to wipe it out. So I've found that taking a screenshot of it just to kind of see how I had it set up before is good until we get a workaround for copying our preference files. So
good point. Yeah, save your screenshot, that way you can get your buttons back.
So is there a way to save your preferences in a file and reload them later?
I don't know yet. I know we did that with Inroads V8i.
Yeah.
I don't think we know yet, like exactly where these corruptions are coming from. And so the caution with that is, if you're not, if you're reloading a saved file, are you actually getting a clean preference file? And so I think that's just where we need a little bit more testing and information before we can say for 100% sure, yes, we are getting a clean preference file. And so right now the direction from East is use the clear your preferences and start from scratch.
Okay.
So Mr. Kreider has a question in the chat here. Can you get the background imagery to show up in the background of a sketch map when you reference move clip to your sheet border? Should I just say no, or should I say I don't know? I don't know. And once again, using the background image, I'm assuming you're meaning the Bing image that you can get from your attributes here. It's not going to show up for me because I don't have a coordinate system set. And that one is different because you're asking for it. Everything else, when you do a plot, sheet border plot, you are asking MicroStation / Open Roads to display the data in its plot and basically, use all of the information about that. That background image is not like an image, say a Google image that you've linked, or other aerial photogrammetry that you've linked to the file, because it's not an actual object. It is, I don't know if I'm right about this, but I kind of think about it like it's a wallpaper. It's kind of like the black color or the gray color or whatever background color you said. It's something that Bentley has put in there. So we don't have all the answers yet on how that actually interacts with our plots. And because all of our plots use pin tables to do all of the special actions like hollow out monuments and turn colored objects into black and white objects and handle text masking, it's a new, and it's not an object, it's a new thing. So we need to address how it works with plotting.
I was wondering about that too. Have you tried that, Sean? Actually trying to reference in?
Yeah, I haven't been successful with it. With V8i, using the Oregon State imagery, that was the WMS server. So, I mean, it was streaming as well. I could get it to work with that, although when it plots, it's pretty slow with that streaming imagery. But yeah, with this Bing imagery that we have as a background, we could toggle on and off. I haven't figured out how to control it through references and get it to show up.
Okay.
So yeah, once again, it's it's a new feature. There's a couple of them in here, and we've got to figure out how they work best. And I think the other thing to remember is essentially what we do with pin tables is kind of old technology. I mean, the idea of the pin tables, we've had that for a couple of decades. And, Bentley may not have put as much effort into making their new things compatible with that sort of old technology. But that's also where sometimes if we can get the right person, we can ask the question and say, how do we do it with the new technology? And they just have to tell us where they've put that tool.
I was going to say TopoDot has an aerial imagery tool that if you're just wanting a quick, aerial image that's going to show up in your reference, you can get it from the TopoDot tool, and it actually attaches as a raster and should show up in that scenario that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think Sean, you did tell me that attaching rasters through the regular way works just fine.
Yeah, I could still use the method through Google Earth just fine. All the same tools are there.
So yeah, I think the TopoDot would also.
I might reach out to you, John, and see what you got for that workflow with TopoDot. Be interested to see what alternatives there are.
Yeah, I know they've got a lot of different aerial imagery services that they pull from.
So let's talk a bit about the cadastral ribbon, or I should say the new cadastral tabs on the ODOT survey ribbon. I've changed to my ODOT survey workflow, and hopefully everybody's had a little chance familiar with this. Basically, the first 4 tabs are all essentially mapping, topographic mapping, cloud mapping, roadway, traffic, terrain stuff, our bridge, railroad, geo, vegetation, landscape, utility, and hydro. So these last 3 are the new ones that we've been working on. And I do apologize for the delay in getting them out to you, but hopefully now the survey ribbon is 99% complete for most drafting mapping activities that we're going to need to do with this tool. So we took everything that was in the old ODOT task menu under Cadastral, and we've reorganized it into these 3 groups. And the way that we thought about this was, let's group the tools or the commands together that make sense for kind of how we see people doing their work. And so the first one we come to is Mons and Control. And under Mons and Control, you have your monuments. And we tried to use a format that makes sense. Found monument text, found section corner text, set monument text, so on and so forth. So the way you should use these is if you need to add some drafting for a monument, and for whatever reason you didn't bring it in through a coordinate import or something, you can choose the tool. It's going to select the proper cell. It's going to set the proper template, which in turn sets all of your attributes. And you can place the monument in your drawing. Now, if we needed to add a paragraph of text about that, we could say this is 1005 and it's a found, 8-inch iron rod. So now it's on our found monument text level. The monument's on our found monument level. And you can go on about your drafting work. So in this workflow, you've got monuments, the calc point text, and then the photo ID points and the pre-mark points just because we haven't necessarily called them control. So they are kind of broken out in their own little way. And then our control is broken out into found control. If you set control, and then for mapping of our filing surveys, we also have the destroyed control, which will put the symbol in that already has the X through it. And then we have tables and miscellaneous. And so these are some of the things that were in the task menu in a number of different places along the way. And so I've tried to put them into the tab or the group that seems to be logical. And so these tables, I don't know how often we still use them. Tables are another topic for another day. Mr. Bersky had a question for me this morning that helped me learn some about tables. So going forward, if we find we don't use these cells anymore, then we might take these tables out of here. But let's say we want a recovered monument table. We can place that cell, and now you can either develop the text or you can drop the status of this table and then make it fit the text as you need it. So that's all of the monuments controlled together. And then the thought is the next or another part of our workflows are our recoveries or our boundaries. And so here we have all of our survey center lines, and these are all going to be set to the standards that ORD displays the center lines when you choose that feature definition. So if you needed to draft the PI reference lines, you can come choose that. It sets the properties, and then you're going to be able to draft a line string. Now notice this menu ends up having a little different format, and that's because of the way these menus are built. We physically cannot, you can only have 3 items in the vertical direction. And since there are 4 items for each type of alignment, we had to format it going left to right. But I feel like this makes more sense and is a little easier to use than if we had done survey main, and then one survey main ended up over here. And then we went to survey minor, and 2 ended up over here. So a couple of these menus, when you have more than 4 options or more than 3 options, end up getting formatted going left and right rather than up and down. So you have all of your center lines. And then we have our resolved right of way. Now you're going to notice that survey boundary has easement lines, access control lines, and so does right of way engineering. And that is because in the products, we want them to display differently. And so if I draw a resolved street highway right of way line from the survey boundary menu, it makes it a nice fat line. And then you have our properties. So property line or ownership text, property hooks, subdivisions, subdivision names, PLSS boundaries. So all of these are a convenient way so that it automatically sets the template, it automatically sets the line style. So you don't have to choose, do I want it to be DLC 1 or do I want it to be DLC 2? And then it'll draft the correct line. Text objects are with it. And then we have our political boundaries. Some of those we don't get to use very often, like the state boundary line, state boundary text. And then here we have title and miscellaneous. Now I have to also show you borders. This is a recent addition. This is with Mike and JP's input. We've got all the borders, and you'll notice a similar menu option in the right-of-way engineering group. So these are all of our survey borders. So survey CRRR, and then basically it is our border cells that have been developed so you can actively place them depending on which size you need and whether you're doing a CRR or whether you're doing a monumentation. And since we have our border cells, it didn't really make sense to call this sheets anymore. So we've changed the name to title and miscellaneous. And now you can see we have some general stuff like north arrows, township and range sheet header. So that'll set the text for you so that it's to standard if you're not using the already developed text that's in the sheet cell. And then some of those miscellaneous items that I talked about, like the fence symbol for a legend. So if you need to add a fence to your legend for your filing map, we know that sometimes when we draw a fence with the custom line style, it doesn't always plot at a convenient location when it's in a legend. So we have that symbol that's developed for the legend.
Kevin,
And then also, yeah.
can you try to put a fence around that border by picking the corners?
So did that place the fence? Or do you mean physically drawing a block around the corners?
No, that's what I had to do. I wanted to see if you can pick it by element.
So actually it is drawing a fence. You just can't see it. So if I say by element, so notice my symbol here says fence active.
Go to your print
Okay,
preview
I'll
to
have
see
to
if
check
you
that
actually have it.
myself. Thank you.
Okay, why isn't print preview bringing it up? Oh, Sean, you might have told me to do a bad thing.
Did you break it?
Yep.
Oh,
So-
no.
Yay. Kevin,
So-
on these sheet borders, is something
Yes.
I realized recently. I've always been in the habit of using my element select tool and double clicking text to edit it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a good way to go anymore. Use the edit text tool. Otherwise, it's fairly unresponsive when you just try to double click, since it's all in wrapped up with everything. We're not dropping these borders anymore. So just something I've noticed recently.
Well, see, that was going to be what I just was going to say about selecting the block. But I will say that Mike knows more about these borders and using them. I have not kept up on what we're planning to do with these borders. But I can tell you what I think that I have done here is by using the place fence by element, it's actually interrogating all of the elements that are in that cell. And so it's like trying to place a fence on everything that's in there rather than just the one that's on the outside. And so that's probably why it is choking right now as I pull up the print preview is it's trying to digest everything that I've just told it to do. And somewhere I've told it something wrong. So we're just going to.
Guess we shouldn't use that method then, huh? The element method.
Well, and so there's two things there that we need to look at. And that is, why are we not dropping the cell or the border? Because obviously, like Sean just pointed out, you can't double click the text because it's once again looking at everything inside of that cell. Two, yeah, do we want to use a different method to place a fence around that border? Or three, is there a minor defect in the software and it's not actually behaving the way that it's supposed to behave?
I always use drop element on those border cells. I don't know why you wouldn't. It's the only way you could manipulate anything in them.
Okay, why is my spacebar not bringing up my, oh, because it's in my key in command. Why am I in my key in command? I don't know. There we go. Group, drop. So now we've dropped it. Fence, element. Now it's going to highlight just the one. I've got it selected. There we go. So yeah, I know there's lots of different things that making of sheets and how we control that. There's a lot of new options in there. There's a lot of new powerful tools. And so I don't want to tell people, yeah, go ahead and drop it without knowing fully why everything's built the way it is. So that is something that we need to discuss some more probably. But I will use this as a, even though I don't have anything drafted back in here, notice, we've got color here. We're showing our construction lines. We're showing some construction text. And that's because I haven't chosen a pin table. If I go in here and choose an appropriate pin table, now notice our preview is giving us, the construction text is gone. We're changed to black and white on everything. And if we did have monuments and lines, they would be hollowed. So let's go back to our survey ribbon. Clear that fence. So yeah, we've got some additional breaks, some additional legend symbols. We've got those borders. And let's go to right-of-way engineering for the last one. So I know we all kind of have a little bit different path or order that we do this work in. Survey boundary is intended to be when you're doing the recovery stuff or you're working on your retracement filing map or your monumentation filing map. Right-of-way engineering is you're working on proposed right-of-way or you're working on a right-of-way map product. So that's how this one is organized. Same thing, we've got center lines. We've got 4 across for the 3 main, which is primary, secondary, and then we do put railroad under the right-of-way menu. And that's just how we've done it in the past. Because generally speaking, we don't file a lot of railroad alignments, but when we have to use them in right-of-way, they are necessary for right-of-way. So they kind of are more of a right-of-way object. And then right away also has the jurisdictional transfer alignment stuff. And that's one that you will not see in ORD for a feature definition because it really is for just making a very specific map. Now you have the existing right-of-way lines. And notice we have highway and street right-of-way here, railroad access control line. Doesn't look like we got the last improvement in here. JP actually suggested that in this set of existing lines, we also have the text commands. So there's going to be a highway right-of-way line text and then a street right-of-way text. And it's going to be laid out just like it is in the survey menu or the survey boundary.
Yeah.
We have proposed, and the proposed luckily are 3 items each. So we have temporary easement lines, permanent easement lines, fee right-of-way lines, and access control lines. I think those are our main ones we deal with when laying out new right-of-way. Because the railroad encroachment is kind of its own product, I've grouped all of the railroad encroachment general stuff under one menu here. So the temporary permanent easement line, and then the file number and parcel text that goes with it. And then under our file and parcel menu, obviously we have the different text that we're going to use when you label your right-of-way parcels and your right-of-way map, deed recording text, parcel areas. We still have the little reference arrows up and down, but the one thing you will not find are the right-of-way leaders or the leaders that we used to have. And that's because the curved leader command that we had in V8I is not compatible with connect/ORD. So all of those commands were gotten rid of. All of the necessary lines and text for sales, if you're doing any sort of property management, under that. And then shapes. All of our settings for the area shapes are together in this one menu. And I'm going to select one if my mouse will cooperate and show you. It's going to let you draw a smart line. But notice it does set a template. It does set the level, but it does not set a color. And that's because there's no just one standardized color for that element. Our standard is we vary the colors so that when these are plotted, they can be seen and different files have differences. So when you're using these, you will still need to set that color. And the other thing is when we're investigating some new methods to create those area shapes. So that's still being developed. Notice we have a title and miscellaneous again. And these are all, a lot of these are duplicates because a lot of this stuff has been included in the sheet borders, project name, highway name. But if you needed to add it not from the sheet border cell, then this is where you could find it. And then our right-of-way stamps, preliminary, active, right-of-way break line symbol, and then the borders. And notice there are a lot more borders for right-of-way products than there are for survey products. Hopefully the titles are kind of self-explanatory here. We've got a lot of sketches and they're organized by letter, paper size, and then whether it's landscape or portrait. So we've got letter versions, legal versions, ledger versions. And then we've got the right-of-way roles. And then the notes that go with the right-of-way rules. And then we've got one for right-of-way sheets. And once again, organized by paper size, orientation. And then the last one is our right-of-way specials. And that's not the special of the day. It's those special maps that, so your railroad map, BLM plats, Forest Service plats, and the stuff that goes with them. Now, so that's a general overview of what's in those new menus, the new tools. One thing to be aware of is if you've used any of those before, and we did have this where a few of them had incorrect settings, and you're in your existing drawing and you drew something like this DLC line, and you go, well, that menu was doing it wrong last time. I'm going to check it again. Or if you see this happen, this could be part of the reason. Whenever you use one of these tools for the first time and it calls a template and it does these settings, it's actually reading those standards from the DGN library. And it is writing those standards to your active file. So what happens is if it got written in the very first instance incorrectly because the standards weren't set, we'd miss something in there, and you go back to an existing drawing, it's going to draw it the same way again. Unless either A, you start in a fresh, brand new drawing from the seed, or B, you go into the standards for your drawing and you say update standards from DGN lib. And then it will look for everything that's in your drawing that also exists in these standards libraries and make sure that they match. Questions about the general menus?
Yeah, Kevin, in that right-of-way engineering tab, is it going to be possible to add a couple of survey tools to the ones that we have available in there?
So
I think
the
we
survey,
talked about that before.
yeah, the survey toolbox here.
Yeah, like adding in the create region command for creating parcels, for example, or the place note command for placing leader lines for notes.
So basically, each one of these menus, we can have it include this toolbox or not include this toolbox. But I think what I'd like to do is keep that toolbox the same no matter what menu you're on. So, even though like the create region is probably going to be a command that you're only using while you're doing right-of-way engineering, just to have this toolbox generally the same, I would want to keep it there. So yeah, I think we can add those. And in general, if you guys have suggestions, now, obviously, the more stuff we add to these toolboxes or the more buttons we add here, we start to run into a problem where, as your window shrinks or your display resolution changes, different things can disappear or collapse. I don't know if you've noticed that yet. Like if I go to the survey menu now, the Bentley survey menu, notice how my tools are all collapsed. They don't look the same. It dynamically adjusts to whatever your resolution is. So that is one of the reasons that we have tried to keep, none of these are good examples, but we've tried to keep, like here for borders, rather than list, there's 6 there, 3 there, rather than list all those and then this menu could end up being big, we've said, well, let's just make it a drop down, because normally, you can choose, okay, I'm going to do a sketch or I'm going to do a roll. It's not like you need to see both selections at the same time. So yeah, so I wouldn't want to add 100 tools to this toolbar, but yeah, we can add a couple more. And like AccuDraw, if nobody ever uses AccuDraw and it's dumb for it to be there, then maybe we take that tool off and replace it with something else. This is completely our toolbar. It's not used anywhere else. And that's why it's named Survey Tools. It's ours.
Okay. Well, that would be my request for those two tools then, if those could be squeezed in.
Yeah. And I just need to go find them and then give the instructions to Mindy.
Okay.
Yeah. And every one of these tools, and I guess, no, I'm not going to say it. Well, maybe I'll say it quickly. I mean, you can make your own toolboxes. And every one of these tools is a tool that's somewhere in ORD. And so basically that's how this toolbox is made. It's just by bringing commands from other tools and organizing them in that toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This one specifically was for John, because how many people know where the attach your coordinate system, reference coordinate system tool is in the Bentley menu?
Yeah, it's buried in there. Yeah, I got mine pulled out as a toolbar, but I didn't see that that's actually up in Survey Tools also.
So
That's another one I put on my quick access toolbar, by the way.
so the other tip is get used to this search. And the other thing is, know that if you click it, it takes you to the tool. But if you come down into it, notice it shows you where every one of those tools lives. And if I click the tool path, then it actually changes me to that toolbar. Rather than if I just click the tool, it just invokes the tool without changing my toolbar or ribbon. Probably using the wrong terminology there. So that's everything I wanted to show. You know, John gave us a question at the first, which is where to go to get a list of macros and attribute pairs. Now, the macros that he's referring to are all of the nifty macros that we've programmed into things like, where's my TAA code? Oh, dang it, I forgot. So when you reset your preferences, your button selections also change. I'm an old schooler and I like to have my mouse wheel be my tentative, but it is not right now. There we go. So this is the macro that you're referring to, right, John?
That is what I'm referring to. Yes. One
So-
of them. Yes.
Right. So the scenario is, let's say they used the wrong field code when they tied this sign and your data came in and it did not have this macro in it, which means your sign, even though you've changed the field code, now the symbol's correct, it's on the right layer, all of that's been changed because you went into your survey details, dug down through here, found the point, made it right. You don't have a macro for it. Let's bring that up in details so that it's easier to see. I'll get there eventually. And we can see it here. But there's no selection. And that's because macros are essentially a piece of coding. You're telling it, I want to look in this library. It's this kind of a macro, and here's the name for it. And then here's all the details about how to get it started. Now, John, you're going to have to remind me here. Did we make a text file with all this in it so they can go find it?
We did not. That's why I asked the question. So.
Okay, you're putting me on the spot.
I am
So-
sorry.
what I'm supposed to answer is, so if you want to find this macro, go find another one in your drawing that was brought in right, and then copy that and paste it into your other one. But what we need to develop, and what we do have developed, is we're going to create this as a text string that will be in basically a support text file. And then you can just have that open in Notepad++ or the whatnot, copy the text from there, paste it into this line, and you can add your macro without having to remember that signs need the rotate cell, and you're going to want it to look 15 feet away, and you're going to do it off of the EP, and you're going to do it to an angle of 0. Is that what you're looking for?
It is. And I actually have a list of these in a OneNote document. So if you can't find them and need them, before we get one posted, you can reach out and I can provide that to you. So
now, the attribute pairs are a different one. Well, I shouldn't say a different one. Notice this point has an attribute pair. And if I go to the buttons, I can actually see it. Now, if the field data didn't get entered with the right attribute, or didn't get any attribute entered at all, then the attribute name is not going to come in here. And for some of the actions that ORD does, it is looking for a specific attribute name. And so that's the part that if you are adding attributes, you do need to make sure that the attribute name is correct. You know, it's not going to look for description, it's going to look for descript. Or it's not going to look for definition, it's going to look for type. But what I need, oh no, is that in working? No. So because I am actively working on getting all of the codes built and hopefully have everything set up for Infinity, I have made a beginning code card for our features with attributes. And each code is listed, the description is listed, and then what that attribute is going to be. And this is the exact name that will be entered for Leica and read by ORD. And then whether it is a piece of text and what you as a field operator should put in, or you know what you as an office analyst should be looking for, or what you should be transcribing from the notes because they didn't use the attributes. Obviously, they can't use the attributes right now because I don't have the code list set up. But once it is set up, we'll have several of these, and not every one of these attributes is mandatory, but for a code that does a special function like the tree code, those will be mandatory attributes. So the field crews cannot use that code unless they actually enter the attributes, because the attributes are going to determine how ORD places the proper cell and then also scales that cell. Another example of mandatory attributes is going to be the new traffic arrow, TAA. But there is our list of attributes, what code they go with, what their name is, and then what is going to be expected. Does that help?
it does. I would also point out that they're also in the back of the Open Road Survey training manual as well. But this table, our code card here, is super convenient as well.
Are there any other questions? What I do need to make sure of is that this attribute code card is actually out on the support site. I will show that to you right now. If you go to the Geometronics share drive, if anybody needs a link to that, I can give that to you. And you go to support, you'll find our tech tips, you'll find Infinity stuff. And if you go to our code lists, notice we have all the code lists from 2019. Obviously, this is a new one, so it was a work in progress, but it still is a work in progress. But yes, there will be a new, once I get the new code list updated, those files will be there. There'll also be a new file that will go with Infinity so that all of the point symbologies show up in Infinity so that you can have a similar look to your Infinity workspace as you would expect in ORD. Anything else I can help with today before we call it a Thursday? Oh, there it is. It's on that toolbar. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I'm going to stop the recording.